Hello again. Welcome back to year 4 of the Religious Education Initiative. This is week 26, day 1. We're continuing our way through the book of First Kingdoms or First Samuel. So last time we saw David in flight from King Saul. He went to the priests at Nob and asked for food and for the sword of Goliath, which he took from that place as he proceeded to find a stronghold to dwell in, where his family and about 400 men who were in various kinds of trouble, but generally were opposed to King Saul, joined him. Unfortunately, although the priests at Nob had helped him under the assumption that he was a loyal servant of Saul, as in fact David still was, apart from the fact that Saul was trying to kill him, Saul still took vengeance on them and had all of them killed but one, who escaped with an ephod and fled to David. I believe an ephod is an article of priest's clothing. So this time we will see how David conducts himself while in exile. So this is chapter 23 and 24 that we'll read today. Now they told David, "The Philistines are fighting against Keilah and are robbing the threshing floors." David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go and attack these Philistines?" The Lord said to David, "Go and attack the Philistines and save Keilah." But David's men said to him, "Look, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more than if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines?" Then David inquired of the Lord again. The Lord answered him, "Yes, go down to Keilah, for I will give the Philistines into your hand." So David and his men went to Keilah, fought with the Philistines, brought away their livestock, and dealt them a heavy defeat. Thus David rescued the inhabitants of Keilah. When Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, fled to David at Keilah, he came down with an ephod in his hand. Now it was told Saul that David had come to Keilah. And Saul said, "God has given him into my hand, for he has shut himself in by entering a town that has gates and bars." Saul summoned all the people to war to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. When David learned that Saul was plotting evil against him, he said to the priest Abiathar, "Bring the ephod here." David said, "O Lord, the God of Israel, your servant has heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city on my account. And now, will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Lord, God of Israel, I beseech you, tell your servant." The Lord said, "He will come down." Then David said, "Will the men of Keilah surrender me and my men into the hand of Saul?" The Lord said, "They will surrender you." Then David and his men, who were about 600, set out and left Keilah. They wandered wherever they could. When Saul was told that David had escaped from Keilah, he gave up the expedition. David remained in the strongholds in the wilderness, in the hill country of the wilderness of Ziph. Saul sought him every day, but the Lord did not give him into his hand. David was in the wilderness of Ziph at Horesh when he learned that Saul had come out to seek his life. Saul's son Jonathan set out and came to David at Horesh. There he strengthened his hand through the Lord. He said to him, "Do not be afraid, for the hand of my father Saul shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be second to you. My father Saul also knows that this is so." Then the two of them made a covenant before the Lord. David remained at Horesh, and Jonathan went home. Then some Ziphites went up to Saul at Gibeah and said, "David is hiding among us in the strongholds of Horesh, on the hill of Hachilah, which is south of Jeshimon. Now, O king, whenever you wish to come down, do so, and our part will be to surrender him into the king's hand." Saul said, "May you be blessed by the Lord for showing me compassion. Go and make sure once more, find out exactly where he is and who has seen him there, for I am told that he is very cunning. Look around and learn all the hiding places where he lurks, and come back to me with sure information. Then I will go with you, and if he is in the land, I will search him out among all the thousands of Judah." So they set out and went to Ziph ahead of Saul. David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon in the Arabah to the south of Jeshimon. Saul and his men went to search for him. When David was told, he went down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon. When Saul heard that, he pursued David into the wilderness of Maon. Saul went on one side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. David was hurrying to get away from Saul, while Saul and his men were closing in on David and his men to capture them. Then a messenger came to Saul, saying, "Hurry and come, for the Philistines have made a raid on the land." So Saul stopped pursuing David and went against the Philistines. Therefore that place was called the Rock of Escape. David then went up from there and lived in the strongholds of En-Gedi. When Saul returned from following the Philistines, he was told, David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi. Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men out of all Israel and went to look for David and his men in the direction of the rocks of the wild goats. He came to the sheepfolds beside the road, where there was a cave, and Saul went in to relieve himself. Now David and his men were sitting in the innermost parts of the cave. The men of David said to him, Here is the day of which the Lord said to you, I will give your enemy into your hand, and you shall do to him as it seems good to you. Then David went and stealthily cut off a corner of Saul's cloak. Afterward, David was stricken to the heart because he had cut off a corner of Saul's cloak. He said to his men, The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed, the Messiah of Yahweh, to raise my hand against him, for he is the Messiah of Yahweh. So David scolded his men severely and did not permit them to attack Saul. Then Saul got up and left the cave and went on his way. Afterwards, David also rose up and went out of the cave and called after Saul, My Lord the king! When Saul looked behind him, David bowed with his face to the ground and did obeisance. David said to Saul, Why do you listen to the words of those who say, David seeks to do you harm? This very day your eyes have seen how the Lord gave you into my hand in the cave, and some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not raise my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed, the Messiah of Yahweh. See, my father, see the corner of your cloak in my hand, for by the fact that I cut off the corner of your cloak and did not kill you, you may know for certain that there is no wrong or treason in my hands. I have not sinned against you, though you are hunting me to take my life. May the Lord judge between me and you. May the Lord avenge me on you, but my hand shall not be against you. As the ancient proverb says, Out of the wicked comes forth wickedness, but my hand shall not be against you. Against whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom do you pursue? A dead dog? A single flea? May the Lord therefore be judge, and give sentence between me and you. May he see to it, and plead my cause, and vindicate me against you. When David had finished speaking these words to Saul, Saul said, Is this your voice, my son David? Saul lifted up his voice and wept. He said to David, You are more righteous than I, for you have repaid me good, whereas I have repaid you evil. Today you have explained how you have dealt well with me, in that you did not kill me when the Lord put me into your hands. For who has ever found an enemy and sent the enemy safely away? So may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day. Now I know that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Swear to me, therefore, by the Lord, that you will not cut off my descendants after me, and that you will not wipe out my name from my father's house. So David swore this to Saul. Then Saul went home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold. Okay, so the main point of this is that we get the chance to see how faithful David is. This isn't just David refusing to fight back against Saul when he's helpless. This isn't just David, running away rather than fight. This isn't just a matter of David conveniently avoiding conflict. This is a matter of David being hunted like an animal, having the opportunity to simply slip a dagger between the ribs of the man who has made himself his enemy while he's indisposed, while he's using the bathroom inside the cave there. He's so close that he can cut off a corner of his cloak. And then David looks at what he's done. He's done violence to the raiment, to the kingly raiment of the Lord's anointed. And he is penitent. He is repentant. He regrets what he has done. But then he comes out and he holds the corner up and he shows it to Saul and says, Do you understand? Please look and see by this token that I could have killed you. There was no reason for me not to do so if I have any intent against you. So David proves his uttermost loyalty to Saul in this, without in any way stepping away from the anointing that he has received. He begins the story being more of a king than Saul was. He's defending an Israelite city that's prepared to deliver him over to Saul when Saul doesn't show up to defend them, but David does. David is being more the king than Saul, but David is still loyal to Saul. Even though Saul is trying to kill him, David is still functioning as a general in Saul's armies. Even though he doesn't have Saul's army, he has an army that he's gathered, and he's using it to serve Saul and the people of Israel. The other thing that we have to point out here, I had said a few weeks ago when we saw David and Jonathan part, that Jonathan is convinced that David will be king, and Jonathan has given up his right to kingship to David. But we hadn't actually seen that made explicit. That happens here. While David is being hunted by Saul, Jonathan comes out to David, who is apparently helpless, rejected by everyone, and Jonathan shows his faithfulness to God, his trust in the Lord, by proclaiming that this outlaw, his friend, will indeed be king, where no one can see the path for that. And he says, and I will serve you. Jonathan, who has the right of birth to be the king himself. Jonathan gives up his kingship and is willing to serve David. Jonathan is the unsung hero of this whole story. And even Saul, at the end, he says, David, I know you will be king, for sure. And he asks David to spare his family. So Saul knows that he's sinned. He doesn't seem able to turn away from it. He's not able to say, therefore I give up my throne, therefore I abdicate. I don't know if that, he surely didn't see his way clear to do that. But even then, Saul asks for mercy for his descendants. And we see that David gives that as we read on through. Anyway, what we should note here is the remarkable obedience and faithfulness of David. Even in the face of all of this, he refuses to seize power. He trusts God. And we really should marvel and imitate Jonathan in his laying aside of power and his obedience and service to the Lord. So that's it for today. We'll see you all shortly for day 2. God bless you.